Hi, everybody. It's Tantra Maat and Dr. Deb Merchant.
Hey.
I just want to thank those of you that continue to pop in and see the reflection of what Deb and I are doing, and the reflection of what the field of Tantra Maat is doing, and the Magicians of Self are doing. It's just the old way. We would visit each other's towns, sit at each other's campfires, or the
Mm.
taverns. If you're in Ireland, you have a Guinness, and share the stories of what you see occurring in the world around you. And not just the circumstantial world, but in Deb's, in my case, the metaphysical world. And so much the metaphysical world is imprinting itself into the circumstantial world, that there are a lot of variances happening that for people that are only circumstance oriented, you might miss them. But for people that are watching the movement of patterns and watching the movement of the psyche and their friends and in cohorts, and of course of those of us that are doing work in the field of Tantra Mat, you begin to see some things that are pretty extraordinary, really. And remember, we've been in a very survival based mentality for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So it's hard a lot of the times to actually intake information or take in information because well, how will this have me survive? How will this help me? How will this fix me? Is such a dominant pattern that we really are just extremely appreciative of how many people are consciously awakening and finding that what we present and post actually nourishes them and actually feeds information that, while it may not be the same language, I don't mean like English or French, we use certain distinctions, but those distinctions resonate with people and they have their own way of saying it. But we're also at a new language level, and and that means, like, I love in my book, I think it's yours, Mind of Creation, or it might have been, it's one of the two, Mind of Creation, or you, or as a multidimensional being. We talk about how empathy, I think it was definitely Mind of Creation, how
Yeah, that's mine.
empathy, yeah, was used one way, way back when, and now it's used in a whole new way. And then, of course, in the book, we reinvent it so it can be used as a creation based word. So there's a lot going on right now. And Deb and I were in a meeting writing the next book, You as the Architecture of Creation, which I need Deb desperately for, because she has done far more work in regard to human identity than I ever have. And so in the midst of us working on the book, we had kind of a aha, or more like an oh no. and and we both just do a lot better if we have an audience, even though you're not here right now. We do a lot better if we have an audience, and that we're going to jam. We're going to jam about stuff, and that we notice is interrupting patterns of isolation and interrupting patterns of separation. And one of those words that fits with it is relational fields, relationship. And so we just decided to jam today. And I really mean the next thing I'm going to say. I was in a very important meeting last night, and the sense of it's an epic moment before a new uh, configuration and new design of how to support people that need um, that are need a more advanced level of care, particularly psychologically and addictively. And but it isn't about the methods; it was more about how do you organize something, with the premise being that we're now in the emergence of wholeness, and how do you build a model where that isn't recognized yet as a common denominator in human existence. And the one thing we came to, which is the last thing I'll say before I turn it over to Deb, is what we came to is we couldn't figure out what, it wasn't ours to figure out what to do. It was the four of us just deeply related to the topic in our own manner, in our own way, and pretty much jamming. We think that we've been constructed since Socrates' day that we have to learn the answer to a question. But honestly, how things really evolved was people coming together and saying what they see and saying what they experienced. Werner Erhard used to call it building possibility and into the field, I would call it. And then things begin to emerge. It isn't like our mental mind has to figure out what it is. We just have to make it a little topical, a little bit like, a lot like maybe uh, everybody talking about Volkswagens, everybody starts to see Volkswagens. And I know it's called the law of attraction, and that'll do. That'll do. But we're not really talking about the transactional to do things. We're talking more about the relational end of things. So Deb, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to mute myself, and then she's going to start because I knew that's what we were talking about, but I couldn't remember what got us so excited about talking about it. So over to you.
Well, the oh no part was we discovered a whole other section that had to be written, added to the book because we would have just left out something so important. And the chapter we're working on right now is the system, how the system of psychology holds in regards and functions with around identity. Um, and that's so it's very involved. What we realized was that the relational field, the phenomenon of relational field was left out. It, without knowing it, we moved around it, but something we were working on that just pinged it. And what do I mean by that? It means nothing in life actually activates outside of relationship. Sperm doesn't do much without the egg, and vice versa. You put them together, the relational field activates an entire potential of whatever being that is. In Tantra's book, You as a Multidimensional Being, which I got to help proofread and edit and engage with that way, the chapter on ethers as a energy formative substance of being that's fundamental, even that doesn't activate until something touches it, relational field. So then what does that have to do with the field
Let
of
me
psych?
deepen that one, okay,
Yeah,
Deb? So ethers is the movement of energy. Often but they're fields. So this is going to be a mind bender. So everybody hang on, please. So when we think love, we think I love you or you love me, right? It's an objective, it's an object. It's an objective transactional connection between two people. But nobody thinks about, if you ever, those days, there's a great poem. I wish I could remember it right now. Oh, it was either Rilke or Rumi. And it's a great poem because it's just a one liner, it's a haiku. Love is blind, but the neighbors ain't. And, uh, and it basically means when you're in the field of love, when that field is filled with love, it's an ether. So love is an ether, whereupon you have no choice but to be what you be and do what you do in that ether. So we mistake emotions as biological, limited to. You can help me with this in a minute, Deb. We limit it to biological responses of reaction or response, and it's so much more. I will find this movie about these angels because they met in a bar to discuss how their territories, the territories of faith, territories of love, territories of gratitude, how they had collapsed. It's an amazing movie, and they were in the bar to figure out how to go find them again, basically. So we're talking about ethers. We're talking about field phenomenon. We could also call it territories for instance, for me, which is way too long a story, but the end result is I and others have been noticing this strange calm. It's like nervous system calm, literally like we're swimming in different waters. That we're etherically in calm, not the I is having a biological relationship. Well, that's not true. That the I is having a feeling called calm. It's more like we're swimming in the waters of calm, and then we're not, and then we are, and then we are not. But it doesn't seem to be stimulation, Pavlov dog generated. So I know it's a complexity, but we've gotten used to it because we live in it and we think with it and all that. But I just wanted to add a bit before Deb went on. Go ahead, Deb.
Thank you. And I would call it an unseen fabric of existence, to as one of the ways I say it to myself. But here, historically rooted in the Latin, I'm reading from Tantra's book. Um, the word ether, meaning upper, pure, bright air. Ether has evolved from being described as the fifth element in in 19th century physics to a concept that signifies the different vibrational forces underlying all creation. So that is, that was, however we got there, we realized even ethers have to be touched by something. It's like physics, quantum physics of the universe. Has, there's a relational phenomenon. So then fast forward to the chapter we were writing on psychology, how the system of psychology orients around identity. And I remember a whole bunch of cool stuff in my studies, my doctoral studies, that called the common factor analysis, that for all the different modalities, therapeutic modalities there are, what statistically they all produce uh, about the same effectiveness rates. And as you all may or may not know, there's a lot of, no, CBT is the best. No, this one is the best. No, that one is. There's a lot of that kind of territorialism and competition. And I was so grateful for this whole unit we had, because there's actually been a lot of research indicating that about, let's see, I want to read about 40% of successful therapy suggests about 40% is the client and the forces outside of therapy, the conditions beyond that, and specific or unique to the client. 30% has to do with relationship or reliance, the therapeutic collaboration. 15% has to do with expectancy, which is a factor of hope. And about 15% of the success is due to the model specific techniques. Now, it's really important that there are so many techniques and modalities available, because different things work for different people. Different things resonate and help a person connect to whatever they're engaged with. That really matters. But what does not get embedded in the students, up and coming budding psychologists enough, is the therapeutic alliance. And that includes empathy and attunement. And Carl Rogers was big on that. Client expectation and hope, therapist presence and responsiveness, collaborative engagement, emotional expression or processing, meaning making, client strengths and resources, and opportunities for, they call it, what's on this paper is corrective emotional experience, but I think that's a weird, I know what it means, but how to shift into something that's more life enhancing is what that means. So the phenomenon of relational field is very significant and not sufficiently presenced or perpetuated in the system of mainstream psychology now. And the section that so that's a piece of the section. The other piece is that there are so many helping professions, helping professionals that are unsung heroes. They bring their hearts, their souls, their minds, their bodies, get worn to a nub, compassion fatigue, or vicarious trauma, whichever one you prefer to use. They mean pretty much the same thing. Are real phenomenon of whole system collapse in the face of overwhelming need to, I'm going to say, reinstill relational field back into the fabric of society. And so we have a whole section to write on the unsung heroes and what many, many, many therapists, doctors, dentists, psychiatrists, many other helping professions, teachers, even police, on and on and on, are bringing to back, trying to weave back into the fabric of society, and that it goes largely unrecognized. And I'm gonna call it what it is. I'm gonna call it what it is. So that's a large part of what I wanted to presence today, Tantra. Anything for you?
Yes. So what happened is kind of a cross between a miracle and magic. Because as we really got into, and you'll read it in the chapter on, I said to Deb, we need to make really clear we're having a system conversation, not a personality conversation, not a personhood conversation, not an identity conversation. And I said, if you really look at how successful therapy has been, it is really due to the therapist
Yeah.
and their direct relationship. And I'm glad you read those three things, Deb. Their direct relationship with the patient, their direct relationship with the model. Not every pianist plays a great piano with the model of therapy they're using, and their ability to inspire hope and inspiration in their patient. And that's really where it started, because of our present mindsets that operate mechanistically and often operate destructively. We were concerned at the end of I start with the concern and then Deb jumped right in. I was concerned that the model of thought people would read in is like we were talking about therapists themselves, and we were definitely not.
Right.
But even more than that, which Deb, you can speak to, nobody ever talks about how systems influence the practitioners of a system. So, like suicide rates
Right.
in doctors and therapists, the burden of of having to, like, and Deb, I would like you to speak to this, the burden of how you can't be personal. You can, with for a long time, therapists couldn't be personal with client. They had to be technical, transactional. And so, but that isn't because of them. That's because that was the licensing model that they had to stay inside of us, even with doctors. And there's this weird, because I don't want to be black and white about this, but the
Yeah.
point we're making is because we don't include the relation, we are not healthy relationally. We're not
Yeah.
healthy relationally. We now in our present culture are looking for everybody out to get us. Everybody's our enemy, or using us. It's been highly demonstrated, I might add, So to really trust somebody, which I think was the second piece you said, be willing to have hope because you trust them, that is very denigrated. It's very denigrated. And, or I'm nothing but your paycheck. There's just think for a minute. There's loads of nasty thinking that can get to this. So Deb and I knew we were walking into a dicey topic, and we just do better playing off each other when we're in a public venue because we have a responsibility to the communication that we're in. So it isn't black and white is the point I want to make. By the way, relationship is never black and white.
Right.
It's gray at best or multicolored at best, you know? And I can tell she wants to talk. She keeps opening her mouth. So I'm going to turn it back to her. And all we want you to do is just take out of this what you value. One of the trouble with writing these books is I am completely relational. I am not transactional. I mean, I'm transactional when I have to be, like when I pay my bills and things like that. Or I'm very transactional in my house. We have rituals and we have things we do, but it's all inside relationship.
That's right.
And and so just listen through in your own ability to wrestle with your own relational field about being in a relationship. Over to you, Deb.
Um, that point, I'm glad you said it that way because it's there's a lot of things. When I pay for my groceries, I'm transactional, but I can pay for my groceries in a very relational way. So even transaction can be a feature of relational field and reciprocity. And it is. I turn over money and they give me tomatoes, that's reciprocity. So, but to back to the field of psychology, I kept emphasizing the system of psychology so that I make sure it doesn't come across that we're making the field that making mainstream psychology wrong. I highly, highly value my studies at Saybrook University, humanistic and transpersonal social justice was, I mean, just, and they kept adding programs, which really irritated me because I couldn't do all of them. But the point is that even as valuable as some of that was, a lot of the books and things that we studied were bashing the system, making it wrong, uh, not allowing for the good that had been done, and not allowing for what had the system get this way. That's what I'm going after, because there are so many psychologists who are being what we're talking about, but they're not uh, in the mainstream. And anytime I've ever looked for a therapist uh, and looked up people on website, not one of them talks about relational capacity. They talk about what they treat, how they treat it, what techniques. Anyway, that's
Can I,
something else.
can I insert one thing there?
Yeah.
And we really have to, this has to be a both and conversation,
Yep.
not an either or. It just has to be. That's the first book, Language Creation, Your Original Design, if you want to read it. But here's the thing. We're no longer burning witches at the stake, although we'll see what happens next year. But so far, so good. Um, uh, because of the psychological process that began to explain things in a sufficient amount of intelligence that people were no longer identifying, which is Deb's whole chapter about, identifying people even through their actions. Like if you gave herbs to somebody, that meant you were a witch. In other words, there began to build out a broader field of understanding about trauma and what's responsible for trauma than for the woman that was trying to save your life.
Right. Right.
Simply said.
Um, So what was the second point of, I forgot. So this, I think, I don't know what the second part of what I was going to say is. Um, well, I don't know, but this is what comes to me now. It's also important, in my view, to say it's easy to talk about relational field and reciprocity and being in relationship. It is not necessarily an easy process to shift from the system you were born into. That means the system is an inheritance, and your body, mind, heart, thinking capacity, beliefs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, are shaped by that.
Yep. So here's what
Oh,
Deb. I'm going to give you the piece that I know I want because I watch your face when I talk. Um, so we're not saying the system of psychology. She's talking about the system that influenced the system of
yeah.
psychology. That's what Deb's after. And one of our concerns is that one of the things she discovered and shared with me is that how slow the mainstream catches up with the consciousness changes in humanity, how slow it is, and a real genuine concern. And she does it much. She does it in the book really well. Uh, the like what is the underpinning is no relationship with each other that doesn't let new systems come online and view them through, oh my goodness, this could really improve relationship. It's more in the side of how does it solve the problem.
Yeah. It also, uh, when the field of psychology was becoming systematized and becoming an institution, the standards of science, like what's in the medical field, were highly, highly, highly valued and adopted. And so, science, like geology, for example, geology evolution is slow. That's the nature of geology. And there was a what I consider an unconscious adaptation that the speed of human consciousness is also slow because evolution is slow. Biological evolution is slower, is faster than geology, but it's still considered slow. And I haven't seen, maybe there it is out there. I just haven't come across it. So if you know of it, send it to me at Dr. Deb at thevitalpsyche.com, that people are thinking in terms of, oh, the evolution of consciousness can be fast. And there are people who've talked about that, actually. Werner Erhard was one, that transformation can be instantaneous. So can transmutation. And actually, Tantra, I didn't say this to you, but there's a phenomenon in recovery from traumatic stress that I'm going to completely botch the name of, but it's the post-traumatic growth. That's it. And that they have been, that some people have an instantaneous recovery and they're launched, they just become their next recursion of self. Their relationship to meaning is different, so forth. And no one's been able to explain it. And I
It's like
realized
it's
when,
like it's like Eckhart Tolle. And if
yep,
you read Eckhart Tolle and not Dan, I can't remember his name, but both those men talk about very traumatic going to the going to the end of their gut, like life was over. And then they had a revelation and off they were. They were
mm-hmm,
completely on the other side of it. Werner Erhard, by the way, how he got changed. He was a used car salesman and he crossed the Golden Gate Bridge and was enlightened by the end of the bridge. So it does happen in a lot of different ways. And but the point we want to make is right now is about now. Right now there's a dramatic shift in consciousness that hardly anybody is paying attention to, and it revolutionizes how we're being asked to interact with each other And what Deb and I are struggling with to try to get across
Mm-hmm.
is if you're in relationship with someone, you can hear they've changed. You're no longer documenting them according to how they've been explained the minute before. Over to you.
And for me, this is at the root of the phenomenon of spiritual emergence. I am totally in love with Emma Bragdon's work. I totally recommend you go to the website imhu.org. Tons of free material on spiritual emergence, personal accounts, as well as really good academic work from a wide range of practitioners. But this is what's at the root of spiritual emergence is the rapid evolution and activation of a person's consciousness. And because there's limited to the system at play, many people get treated as if they're having a psychotic break or a disorder. That's beginning to change. But I've been looking since I became a spiritual emergence coach. I wanted the articulation, and this happened, Tantra, since you and I talked the other day, that sparked this uh, video. I've been looking for what starts the spiritual emergence. What is it? And for me to just to have the articulation of the evolution of consciousness, it's or the post-traumatic uh, growth would be another way to say it, except people end up more whole in that phenomenon, but it's still unexplained. It's still unexplained to this day, unless I just haven't come across the research. And again, if you have come across it, send it to me, please. So I'm really excited by these awarenesses. And I'm also really, really excited about the opportunity to write the whole piece honoring the unsung heroes. I'm so excited to write it. I can hardly stand it. And I don't know how to make it big enough. There's not a billboard big enough. But I feel that way about the garbage men and the teachers and the nurses and doctors and Sunday school teachers, the people who steward life on all manner of levels. So this is going to be an important piece of the book. And then if I can figure out a way, it's going to get plastered on billboards everywhere. So that's that's
But you
go
can
ahead.
even see it in her speaking. The part we can't talk about. We're jamming today. We're not
Mm,
authorities on this. We're discoverers.
yeah,
We're discoverers. Because until something is able to be lived thoroughly, you cannot reauthor it. And it's a very
right.
important thing to realize. But we're very excited about this period of time we're in because that which is unworkable is becoming visible, very visible.
Yeah,
And one of the things that's incredibly unworkable is transaction without relationship. It's that's the baseline here. So it's a discovery process. It's a both and. So I would like to leave you because we're not going to do more than a half hour. I would like to leave you with a thought. And then Deb, if you have one, is I would like you just to live with the thought, what is it for me to be in relationship with life every single minute, from the birds in the sky when you walk out the door to when you're buying your groceries? I used to embarrass my kids out of 10 years growth because I was asking about their health and what they thought about a problem I had. I mean, this is the guy checking me out at the grocery store. And not checking me out, checking out my groceries at the grocery store. I apologize. And but if you put relationship first and transactional second, and if everything you're transactional about was about who you are, how you're in relationship with your gas company, how you're in relationship to the people on the street, just see what kind of fertile field it starts to build. Over to you, Deb.
No, I heartily agree with that. Heartily agree. And I think that's you just answered something for me when I was, yeah, I don't know, 20s. That's when I started noticing. I could go to a grocery store doing my own thing, wasn't talking to anybody, and people would just come up to me and say, "Don't I know you from somewhere?" Or they would just start telling me stuff that was really very personal. Not, I don't mean inappropriately, I mean, it just happened. And it was always a surprise, always like, it was like a sacred ceremony right there in whatever grocery store I was in, or had it happen in airports, And so, but that's had me see something that I don't need to go into now. But the point is that it really is quite something to engage with. What is it to be in relationship with everything, everything, doing your dishes, and whatever it is, mowing your lawn, the birds, the worms, whatever is real for you. And it does change you, and your identity will be different. And so there is caretaking there. It's it's not just some peak experience. This is a shift in your reality. And I hope you venture forth.
So, what Deb said in the beginning about the ethers, this is how you touch the ethers: tenderness, care, love, even freedom. Because remember, the English language boxes things, makes them objective, not relational. So we'll leave on that note. Thank you all for this time together.
Yeah.
What will happen if you so choose? If you write Deb and I questions or things you want us to talk
Yep.
about, this will be on Substack and on YouTube, and we will respond because it's much better for us if you even challenge what we say, or you ask questions, or even if we trigger you in some manner. This isn't like a one-time thing for us. We're doing this video because we want to go on record for what we're experiencing.
Yep.
But then you should see what it's taking us to write this book, and the same with the last two books, to try to operate where you're not making anything right or wrong, where you're just trying to establish recognition and how everything relates to everything else, is not an easy way to do it. It's not easy given our present type of language we use. All right, Deb, we're leaving now, okay?
Yep.
See you
Thank
later.